In 1992, ICRAF had been in existence for about 14 years, but did not have a real presence anywhere in Asia. When I was called upon to launch the regional program, I moved from the Philippines, where I had been leading the Farming Systems program at the International Rice Research Institute, and I felt mighty overwhelmed by it all. Moving to Indonesia, setting up our program offices was an enormous task. And as I moved onto the campus of the Forest Research Institute, it was Pagintings that was my lifeline. Of course, Pagintings, you must be there in the audience, and you were the guy who kept my sanity during those initial months and years of all of the arrangements that were necessary to operate effectively under the Indonesian situation. Chun Lai was there in the Forest Research Institute also as the coordinator of the Asia-Pacific Agroforestry Network. And we started our office in a little back room at the Apan building, which existed at that time. And I was joined very soon after by the able Suzy Sarakman, who administered our program and started our administrative operations. But it wasn't long after that Pamaina joined me, and we began an amazing friendship, he and I, and working relationship that has continued over the past 2 decades. Tom Tomic joined us soon after that as our economist for the region, and we began to build a truly exceptional team. The driving frame for our regional program began to develop during those early years. It was focused specifically on the forest margins and the challenges of the development of alternatives to slash and burn. The ASB program provided the platform by which our entire regional research agenda was formulated, and we began work in a number of locations around Indonesia, particularly in Sumatra and Kalimantan, where we began looking at the development of a way of understanding the options for land use systems in the tropical forest margins. Our work evolved into what became known, quite famously, globally as the ASB Matrix, a set of tools for analyzing both the biophysical and economic aspects of land use choices on the tropical margins, which have been used extensively as both data sets and methodologies in the succeeding years. An exercise that we're quite proud of to have contributed with our colleagues from all over Indonesia and many other countries throughout the tropics. As an agronomist and agroecologist, I was particularly intrigued by the Imperata grasslands challenges in Indonesia and the region as a whole. I was particularly proud to have our team involved in organizing a major conference in Indonesia during the mid-90s, which produced a book and a set of analyses of how, in fact, a problem which was conceived as being the rehabilitation of wastelands was misconceived, and that the Imperata grasslands, by and large, were areas that could be quite productive if, in fact, land tenure was addressed and people who lived on the land had control of its future and enabled to manage the land instead of allowing it to burn each year, which was the reason that the Imperata grasslands developed in the first place. Well, that story has become important these days as we deal with the challenges of oil palm development along a pathway of low carbon emissions, particularly as we see the enormous potential for Indonesia's peatlands to emit carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases beyond any land use systems anywhere else in the world. And as land use systems carbon emissions decrease in many parts of the world, and globally they are decreasing gradually, we note that the peatlands present a huge risk for greenhouse emissions. And the Imperator grasslands, which we began studying together with Indonesian colleagues so long ago, now become a center of attraction for the development of the peatland, of an alternative to the peatlands for development of oil palm and other plantation crops. Well, a couple of years after ICRAF started up in Bogor, and we began to staff up and establish our programs, we were joined by Jeff Sayer, Director General Designate for the C4, which was just arriving to begin operations at that time. The Indonesian government, during the discussions with C4, was very gracious and offered ICRAF the opportunity to build a building on the campus of C4, which was paid for entirely by the government as it set up the campus for the C4 operations. This was very generous and allowed us to then imagine the growth potential for ICRAF and its team in the region. And I was asked how much space we needed, and I recall putting together a plan for a building of about 650 square meters and submitted that to our Indonesian hosts and to C4. When my boss, the Director General at ICRAF at that time, Pedro Sanchez, who many of you remember well, got word of this, he was upset. He couldn't imagine that ICRAF in Southeast Asia could possibly make use of that much space. And yet I was sure that at the rate that our team could grow in terms of achieving its mission, we would be lucky if we didn't need more space than that. Well, as I said, Pedro was pretty put out by the possibility of that much space and that large a building. But he relented, and we went ahead. Indonesia built the facility for us. And by golly, within 1 year after we moved into our new quarters, we had entirely filled up the building with our growing staff and projects and collaborators and associates and consultants and secondments, and a wonderful team of people who came together during those days. Meanwhile, of course, this was a regional program, and we started our work in other countries under the framework of the ASB. We began first in the Philippines, where I personally had a long history of working, and began to actually assume some of the research programs that at that time the International Rice Research Institute was quite interested to share with us or to divulge with us in terms of both the ASB program and the SANREM, or Sustainable Agriculture and Natural Resources Management program. And I was joined by staff transferred from IRRI to rapidly begin building up our work in the Philippines. But we also began operations in northern Thailand under ASB with Dr. David Thomas leading the work. And a few years later, we began to make our presence felt in China. We're working with the National Chinese Academy of Sciences in Kunming in southwestern China, and eventually in Vietnam as well. So with those, we became gradually a fully regionalized program based. Well, during the turn of the century, I recall that our work and our attention shifted quite dramatically towards the issues of environmental services in the uplands of Southeast Asia. And at that time, we started the quite unique and interesting network, which is now called RUPES, or Rewarding the Upland Poor for Environmental Services. And in the context of doing that and collaborating with IFAD and many, many other partners in both the conservation and development community in developing that network of activity throughout the region, we began to recognize the huge challenges that exist in developing rewards for environmental services as a means of negotiating agreements between those farmers and rural people living upstream at higher elevations vis-a-vis the more urban and agricultural communities using irrigation facilities downstream. And that set of experiences helped us to evolve into a whole set of decision tools that have come to be known as negotiation support services, or negotiation support systems, I should say. Under the leadership of Chip Fay, who so ably worked with us and the Ministry of Forestry in terms of policy change during those years, we began to build and test these methods of negotiation support services. And as I understand, they have been applied quite liberally throughout many parts of Indonesia as we looked to the development of the means by which rural people could be recognized for the efforts that they put into conserving the environment as they go about their agricultural activities. Well, today we face a whole range of major challenges and opportunities in the world of agroforestry. We are seeing transitions, agroforest transitions in many countries that are really putting serious effort in the region to the development of tree cover. We know that China, the Philippines, Thailand, other countries have actually passed through a tree cover transition in which deforestation has developed into a net increase in tree cover. Not always, of course, with natural regeneration, but at least the development of tree cover through agroforestry. It is true, as we look at the enormous challenges of addressing climate change, that more and more people from various fields are seeing agroforestry as the answer to the development of carbon or climate smart means of production systems. I just got back from a conference in South Africa last week in which we are working to develop a new global alliance on climate smart agriculture to fill the void that has been sadly developed because the world is failing to negotiate adequate agreements to control greenhouse gas emissions. And the thought is now that those countries and organizations that are willing to make the commitments to move forward could do so voluntarily under a new alliance that would enable us to make progress while the negotiations continue to be bogged down. I think climate change is certainly one of ICRAF's most important areas of contribution in the coming years, and I look forward to the continued innovations and rigorous science that is backstopping the regional program's work in collaborating with the government of Indonesia and the other countries of the region. Indeed, I'm proud to say that the Southeast Asia program that has been so ably led by Meinovan Nordwijk and Ujwal Pradhan during the past decade since I departed for Nairobi has continued to grow from strength to strength in its science, in its leadership, in its policy and development impact. I'm very proud of that achievement, that set of achievements, and I look forward to those continuing under the able leadership and engagement of our staff in the region and our many wonderful collaborators.
Today, we shall reflect on the last 2 decades of the collaborative activities of ICRAF, and also share ideas and your inputs and inspiration for the way forward. Through our reflections and the understanding of the changing context, opportunities and challenges we face, we garner greater resolve and commitment to pursue our mission, that of helping improve the lives and landscapes of millions of poor farmers and smallholders in the region. A resolve through our humble part to ensure environmental sustainability, sustainable livelihoods, poverty alleviation, cultural integrity, and human dignity.
It is an honor for me to represent FORDA, the Ministry of Forestry of Indonesia, on this event, to stand here and congratulate one of our close partners in research activities, the World Agroforestry Center, better known as ICRAF, on this very special day, on the 20th anniversary of ICRAF operation in Indonesia. On behalf of FORDA, the Ministry of Forestry, we wish you, all of our friends from ICRAF, a happy anniversary. May ICRAF has a greater success in the future and continue to provide innovative knowledge and skills on how to manage our land use for better people welfare, more better productivity, and sustaining environmental services through agroforestry research application and solution. Ladies and gentlemen, contemplating on 20 years of age for a person is like a teenager who to grow up into mature and thoughtful. At this age, usually someone has already become wiser, more energized, effective in making decisions and doing research, proposing new policy for a solution in public area. Having mature concept, being so concerned to surrounding environment, having a good sense of responsibility, increased self-confidence, but even more open to criticism. At this time, someone will see challenges as opportunities and facing the future with a passion. We want to see ICRAF in the future increasingly aggressive in the sense of making more valuable contribution and the response to various environmental problems and the effort to improve society welfare.
The initial history of the ICRAF Indonesia. In year 1992, team from ICRAF of Nairobi had a visit to Indonesia. They were accompanied by Dr. Sucipto Parto Harjono. He is from Food Crop Institute, but he already passed away July 2011. Dr. Soleh Sumana from Soil Research Institute and myself from Forest Research. And at that time we visit 3 provinces. The first one, Riam Kanan in South Kalimantan. We looking for the sitting cultivation. Sitting cultivation. After that, South Sumatra, looking for the agroforestry rubber trees, and West Sumatra, the farmers export pattern in highland area. The field trip result. all participants feel that Indonesia is a good place for agroforestry research because many activities of agroforestry has developed in the field. The government response. The late Professor Sukiman Atmosudarso, former BOT of ICRAF to Twentieth 1980, really support the establishment of ICRAF in Indonesia, office in Indonesia.
I'd like to congratulate ICRAF in Indonesia for the 20th anniversary, and this, like Pak Bambang mentioned, is a kind of 20 years person is becoming cantik and handsome in the future. And to me, ICRAF is one of the best research organizations. Why I said this? Because ICRAF not just looking on the research on policy, they are working in the field. They are getting evidence in the field and come into better analysis, better advocacy for policy making decisions. I think it's the best for us in the Ministry of Forestry in the case, because what they are doing is science-based. In Indonesian we call not just ecek-ecek. It's very, very science-based. This is very, very useful for us because they are doing in the field, getting evidence, analyzing, and come into the policy making, advocacy, and policy reform, especially for the field of agroforestry.
Pada waktu 93 saya melihat ada Agroforestry di Litbang itu, saya pikir waktu itu, dan saya lihat ada Pak Ginting, saya pikir waktu itu direkturnya Pak Ginting. Saya pikir Pak Ginting karena waktu itu kelihatan sibuk sekali sementara orang lain nggak ada. Setelah itu baru saya tahu, after that I realized that the director of the ICRAF Southeast Asia is my neighbor in Pasir Mulia village near my house, and also Pak Emransa. Dan sejak itu saya tahu, oh ada ICRAF di Indonesia. Karena selama saya sekolah di IPB, saya belajar agroforestry hanya sedikit, dan selama kerja saya hanya sedikit sekali melihat praktek agroforestry di Indonesia. Dan nampaknya pada zaman itu, pada rezim itu, waktu Pak Wahyudi berkuasa, agroforestry nampaknya kurang disentuh, sangat kurang disentuh Pak ya. Sehingga waktu itu masih berpikir kayu, masih berpikir bagaimana merubah kawasan hutan untuk transmigrasi, untuk perkebunan dan lain sebagainya. Sedikit saja orang yang bercerita atau berwacana mengenai agroforestry. Dan saya sangat bertanya-tanya mengapa hal itu terjadi. Sampai akhirnya saya berkenalan dengan Pak Mainer, berkenalan dengan siapa pacarnya di Pak Mainer. Dan lain sebagainya. Ternyata sudah banyak penelitian agroforestry yang dilakukan di ICRAF di Indonesia. Pertama kali yang saya lihat memang seperti yang diceritakan Pak Ginting mengenai rubber plantation Pak ya. Kemudian saya juga sangat tertarik dengan pohon damar yang banyak dibahas oleh kawan-kawan saya di sana. Terakhir adalah masalah PIS. Waktu itu buat saya lah ini masalah ini solusi ini PIS, karena we have to include maximum as possible community and development of the forest in the village. So PIS will be the good or the most appropriate vehicle for that.
Syukur alhamdulillah dengan adanya iklan ini kami di BPDA bisa berkontribusi minimal bahwa iklan sangat membantu kami sehingga ada kolaborasi yang positif antara iklan dengan BPDA.
ICRAF has also contributed, especially Pak Yanto and Bu Sonia contributed to us to build a platform called LUAS. LUAS is kind of flexible in English, right? But LUAS is a platform to make land use planning, land use planning for low emission development strategy. Right? And LUAS is to support us to assist a local government, especially provincial government, to develop what we call it a regional action plan or RAD to reduce greenhouse gas emission. And this platform also help us to reduce our emission, as our president committed to reduce our emission 26 under 41% by 2020. So ICRAF has contributed and helped us to make a plan to reduce emission.
Well, of course, the time passed, and then I also interact with Bu Sonia, Bu Beta, with many friends from ICRAF. The most comfortable thing from ICRAF friends is the family condition, the circumstances. So you feel just at home when you talk with them, and I think these are the things that the strength of ICRAF, how they can keep the partner, the collaborators to work continuously to the future. And I think it's really inspiring for the collaborator to produce the best thing, because we feel very comfortable to work with ICRAF in the last 10 years.
This is the story about a Noel project. We call it Noel. James found a very good abbreviation of nurseries of excellence in Aceh. Was a big challenge during the time. The SIDA is very much centralized in Canada, so everything's always managed from Canada. I think it's still under now, but less now. During that time, headquarters always asking, are you sure working with the research institute that's basically with less experience basically at the grassroots level doing real work with the community, because my long involvement also working together with Pak Minor, Jeffrey during the time in Halimon. I say yes, why not? We have a very good people, and some of that work, specifically research based and working directly with the community.
The World Agroforestry Center has been an important part of Partners for Asia's Forestry Program in the Asia Pacific region back over the past 20 years. Our collaboration commenced in the mid-1990s with research on the potential for agroforestry system to rehabilitate imprata grasslands in Indonesia. This was followed by further project addressing alternative to slash and burn agriculture in Indonesia, Thailand, and Africa, as well as research on the value agroforestry mosaics in water catchment in Southeast Asia.
And also, we're talking about the complex institutional framework from the local government, from the national government, and these have been successfully work together with ICRAF in some of the projects that I have just mentioned about. And maybe not only about the collaborations, but also about, this collaboration should achieve something. The goals from the human side, from the local government side, from the grassroots side, that they want to get more capacity so that they are so that could enable them to solve their problems in their own land. And this is something that has been supported and facilitated by ICRAF so far, by providing traditional classroom training, but also on the job training, so that they could be able to do the work after the project has ended. And also about the development of tools, development of instruments, guidelines, many decision-making tools, and this have been also been developed in some of the projects and also implemented. I think develop and implementation is two tools that cannot be separated, and this has been successfully be worked on by ICRAF in some of their works with us.
So ICRAF, working with local communities, the Indonesian government, and oil palm sector, are helping meet sustainability criteria in land use planning in West Kalimantan and 2 districts. So field-based research again, immediately benefiting the local communities. And this is specifically to balance the social needs of rural communities and palm oil production, and make sure that there are strategic rural areas of rural communities' natural resource claims that are accommodated in spatial plans. So again, through that very small example, it's quite clear that ICRAF is working very closely with a diverse set of partners in a very grounded place, and everybody's working for the benefit of the communities and also for the economy of Indonesia. We all know that palm oil is an important commodity here. And secondly, and this has been talked about by a few others, I think ICRAF continuing to work with multiple stakeholders using the negotiation support systems, the rapid land tenure assessment, RATA, right, and LEWIS, which I finally found out means land use planning for low emissions development strategy. So I feel like I should get a certificate just for that. But I think the ICRAF with working with multiple partners and using these tools and other action research initiatives, approaches that ICRAF has developed to incentivize low carbon development planning and implementation that foregrounds and benefits rural communities living in and around the forest. You're already doing it, and that's clearly what we need in the future, as we heard from our colleague from Babanas. So once again, it's a real honor to be here, both personally and as a representative of the Ford Foundation, to celebrate ICRAF and its partners' remarkable work and impact over the last 20 years here in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. And I look forward to celebrating another 20 more at least. Thank you.
But actually, I still learned several things. The first thing that I wondered from Pak Dennis' presentations this morning, when he mentioned about him being the team being rebellious, and that's how he was being pushed to the headquarters, so people can keep on controlling him, to keep an eye on him. Perhaps the same thing here with me. Yeah, maybe the management, maybe Pak Ujjal, Pak Maina think the same thing too. Yeah, about me. This woman is being too rebellious. Perhaps let's tie her hands so that we can control.
I am very proud standing here and taking this very particular opportunity because I missed almost a year all event in this building. But for this purpose, I am coming all the way. 2 hours traffic from the south because I have a message to convey. First is that if we talk and we remember ICRAF, I immediately remember when I was students attending the World Forestry Congress in Jakarta. That was the time where agroforestry blooming, if you wish. Yeah, Pak Sukiman was there and many people. So what I would like to acknowledge, I've been working with so many institutions, including, and we shared the same country when I was in C4, of course, before joining WWF. I witnessed that ICRAF is among the first pioneers in putting people centric. That this is about people, this is not about landscape, this is not about tree, this is not about whatever you say, this is about people. I think this is very important for your reference to the future. So, the strength of ICRAF because it's focused on people. The second strength, that they are a very modest scientist. You know, scientists can be very arrogant. Don't look too far beyond the fence. just around the campus. There are many island scientists. So, but I think we have to acknowledge our ICRAF scientists are a modest one. That is their style. Why? Because they are working with people. So the basic strength is with communities.
And in 2005, we had the ASEAN Regional Workshop in Madiun, hosted by Perhutani at that time, that was supported by the Ministry of Forestry and the Ford Foundation at that time, represented by Pak Ujwal. And through the years of ASFN development, we had received support from the Ford Foundation as well in bringing the national focal points to attend the annual meetings in the various ASEAN countries. And just last week, we had the operational planning for the next 3 years of ASFN, when we had invited ICRAF as well as part of our strategic partner. And with this collaboration, we are looking ahead for the next 3 years for identifying, assessing, and developing, as well as upscaling the robust demonstrated action research in Indonesia, being the lead country for ASFN, especially to show to the ASEAN countries in upscaling these best practices for sustainability of the environment as well as the prosperity of the people. And for instance, by showing how agroforestry works in degraded areas, as well as how to show the cross-cutting issues can work and test it. For instance, how we can work with coastal areas, mangrove areas, so that we can have cross-cutting areas not only between agriculture and forestry, but also with the fisheries and livestock topics of the ASEAN cooperation.
So I will not, in view of the time, go through all of that. There is also a media release that basically summarizes most of this. We heard about the various programs, various hypotheses, what we were trying to respond to, and also from the feedbacks and remarks from our former DCs doing that. So basically what we have is antecedents, what was the historical past, and where do we go on from here? And I'm trying to focus a little bit on that. So, as I mentioned, our forte really has been looking at tools, capacity building, knowledge generation, policy linkages, science that is relevant, legitimate, as well as credible. Sonia mentioned a bit about our science domains and how we look at partnerships and scaling up. But
among the farmers and among the policymakers and among the donors, we are very sure that what outcomes we want. And we want impact, and we want outcomes, and we want everyone to be happy and healthy, and the environment to be good, and the market value chains to work. And according to the policy, we're very clear on what we want to achieve. We're also very clear of the context where we are in space and time. But hey, we're not quite sure how to get from where we are to where we want to be. We need a bit of magic to go from where we are to what we, and that's policymakers' language. Now, here on the same thing, we see something about science. And science, okay, they acknowledge that we need to know where we are, we need to know the context, but we're actually interested in how things work. And we're interested in theories about how things work, and doing experiments and finding that our theory wasn't quite right yet, and we approve the theory, and we publish, and we cite each other, and we publish more, and we approve the theory. But you see here, it doesn't lead to any outcome. We get better and better science, and we know more and more about how things work, but this remains empty. So what can we do? Well, maybe we can actually close the toolbox and look how the colors match between, okay, we have interest in the context, from the local people and from the public, etc., etc. We can link in that from the science we can help to understand how things work and go back here. But in order to get outcomes, we actually need to get it back into the real world and to link the different knowledge systems. And that's what our toolbox has to be. So now we have to show abracadabra, so long, what is it? Please help, please help, please help, please help. Can we make this toolbox into something that actually is useful? Now, Pak Fransja asked for the tools on behalf of Masyarakat Indonesia. Pak Fransja, can you please come forward? See whether magic is going to get somewhere. And after we open the toolbox, let's see what's inside here. Now you see, here we have. For the What we are going to launch today is the English versions. Yeah, it is not the translation of the Indonesian because we have to speak in different language. So this is the English version, and it's under printing. Yeah, we have the example of the copy. But let me just briefly explain about this book. This only 4 chapters, presenting the introduction, the background of this book, and then the challenge and opportunities. I think you heard today from our keynote speakers that even though it is not listed in the formal regulations, the word agroforestry, or wanatani in Indonesian word, but the practice has been since long time ago. So like tumpang sari, actually that's the agroforestry practice that has been long time ago practiced by the community